The rain was pouring down as I sat in my old Toyota, staring at the magnificent cathedral where my sister Emma was about to marry the love of her life. At 7 months pregnant, every movement sent sharp pains through my swollen body, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the emotional agony that had been eating away at my soul for weeks. My name is Sarah, and 3 weeks ago, my entire world collapsed in the most devastating way possible. I had rushed home from my job at the local grocery store, desperate to tell my husband Marcus the wonderful news: we were having a little girl. I had just come from the ultrasound, clutching the precious black and white photos that showed our daughter's tiny profile, her perfect little hands, but when I burst through our apartment door, breathless with excitement, ready to share this magical moment with the man I had loved for 5 years, the sounds that greeted me made my blood freeze in my veins. Laughter. Intimate whispers. The unmistakable sounds of betrayal echoing from our bedroom upstairs. My trembling hands pressed against my growing belly as I climbed those stairs, each step feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. When I pushed open the door to the bedroom where Marcus and I had made love countless times, where we had whispered our dreams of the future, where we had conceived our precious daughter, I found him tangled in the sheets with my own sister Emma. They were so lost in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there, my heart shattering into a million pieces. Emma's engagement ring, the massive diamond that her wealthy fiancé David had given her just 6 months earlier, glinted mockingly from the nightstand where she had carelessly tossed it aside. When Emma finally saw me, her face didn't show even a flicker of shame or regret. Instead, she smiled, that cold, calculating smile I remembered from our childhood, the one she wore whenever she had successfully stolen something that belonged to me. Well, she said, not even bothering to cover herself. Look what the cat dragged in. Marcus scrambled for his clothes, his face flushed with guilt and panic. Sarah, I can explain, this isn't what it looks like, he stammered, but his words felt like poison in my ears. How do you explain away a year-long affair? How do you justify betraying your pregnant wife with her own sister? How long? I whispered, my voice barely audible as tears began streaming down my cheeks. Emma stretched lazily, like a satisfied cat. Oh, about 14 months now. Right around the time you started showing with that little mistake you're carrying. She gestured dismissively at my pregnant belly, calling our beautiful daughter, our miracle baby we had tried for so long to conceive, a mistake. The cruelty in her voice, the casual way she dismissed not just my marriage but my unborn child, broke something fundamental inside me. You're getting married in 3 weeks, I choked out. To David. He loves you. How could you do this to him? To me? Emma laughed, actually laughed. Oh, sweet, naive Sarah. David is my ticket to the life I deserve. The mansion, the country club membership, the status. But Marcus? She ran her fingers through my husband's hair possessively. Marcus is my passion. I can have both, the wealthy husband and the man who makes me feel alive. I learned that day that not only had Emma been sleeping with my husband, but she had also been systematically poisoning our family against me. She had told our mother that I was unstable, that my pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid and delusional. She had convinced everyone that if I started making wild accusations, they should simply ignore me as the rantings of an emotional pregnant woman. Marcus moved out that very night, taking nothing but his clothes and what remained of my shattered heart. Emma continued planning her lavish wedding as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just destroyed 2 families with her selfishness, but our mother, bless her well-meaning heart, insisted I attend the wedding. You need to be there for your sister, she said, oblivious to the truth. Family means everything, Sarah. Whatever silly fight you two have been having needs to be put aside for her special day. So here I was, 7 months pregnant and heartbroken, trying to find something appropriate to wear to my sister's wedding, the sister who had stolen my husband and was about to marry a man she was using for his money while planning to continue her affair. That I finally settled on a simple black dress, the only formal thing that still fit my changing body. It wasn't expensive or elegant, but it was all I could afford on my grocery store salary, especially now that I was preparing to be a single mother. The cathedral was breathtaking. Emma had spared no expense, filling the space with thousands of white roses and crystal decorations that caught the light from the massive chandeliers. As I walked in, I felt completely out of place among the designer-dressed guests who belonged to David's wealthy social circle. That's when I met Victoria, Emma's maid of honor and best friend from their elite sorority. Victoria was everything I had never been: tall, blonde, dripping in diamonds, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money or status. She looked me up and down with obvious disgust. "You must be the sister," she said, her voice sharp with disdain. "Emma mentioned you might show up, though I can't imagine why you'd want to embarrass yourself like this." The way she said it made it clear that Emma had painted me as some pathetic charity case, probably telling her wealthy friends that her sister was an unstable, jealous woman who couldn't handle Emma's success. Victoria led me to what could only be described as the worst seat in the house, a folding chair tucked behind a massive pillar where I would be virtually invisible to the other guests but would have a perfect view of my sister marrying the man she was deceiving while planning to continue sleeping with my husband. As I carefully lowered myself into the chair, I immediately noticed it was unsteady. The legs were uneven, causing it to rock dangerously with any movement. When I looked around for another seat, Victoria smirked. "Oh, that's the only seat left. I'm sure you'll manage." The ceremony began, and Emma looked absolutely radiant in her designer wedding gown that probably cost more than I made in a year. As I watched her walk down the aisle toward David, sweet, devoted David who clearly adored her and had no idea he was about to marry a woman who was using him, I felt sick to my stomach. But then Victoria began her campaign of cruelty. During the opening prayers, she would catch my eye and smile maliciously. When the priest asked everyone to stand for a hymn, she deliberately walked past my chair and gave it a subtle bump that sent it rocking violently. I had to grip the sides to keep from falling, my pregnant belly making it difficult to maintain balance. The first time, I thought it was an accident. But as the ceremony continued, Victoria found excuse after excuse to walk past my precarious seat. Each time, the bump was a little harder, the chair rocked a little more dangerously, and my fear of falling and hurting my baby grew stronger. Other guests began to notice the unstable chair and started snickering. Some pulled out their phones, recording what they thought was just a clumsy pregnant woman who couldn't sit still. The humiliation burned through me, but I tried to endure it for my mother's sake, for the sake of keeping what remained of my family together. During the reception, Victoria's cruelty escalated to a new level. She gathered a group of Emma's sorority sisters around my chair, all of them perfectly groomed and wearing dresses that cost more than my monthly rent. They formed a circle, pretending to have casual conversation while taking turns, accidentally kicking or bumping my chair. "Oops," one would say sweetly after sending me rocking. "So sorry, didn't see you there." Then they would dissolve into giggles, like teenage bullies who had found the perfect victim. I begged them to stop, explaining that I was 7 months pregnant and terrified of falling, but my pleas only seemed to encourage them more. "Oh, come on," Victoria said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "We're just having a little fun. Don't be such a drama queen." She made it sound like I was overreacting, like I was the problem for not being able to take their harmless joke. Other guests started gathering around to see what was happening, and suddenly I became the unwilling center of attention. That's when Victoria announced her twisted game to the growing crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called out like a ringmaster at a circus, "let's see how long our pregnant friend here can stay upright in her wobbly chair." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. People started placing bets, treating my terror and humiliation as entertainment. I looked desperately around the room for my mother, for anyone who might help me, but everyone was either laughing along or pretending not to notice. The absolute worst moment came during the toasts. The best man had just finished a beautiful speech about love and commitment, and everyone raised their champagne glasses in celebration. That's when Victoria positioned herself directly behind my chair, her eyes gleaming with malicious intent. As the crowd cheered and cameras flashed, capturing what should have been a moment of joy and celebration, Victoria drew back her foot and kicked my chair with vicious force. The chair toppled backward, and I crashed to the marble floor with a sickening thud. My water glass shattered, soaking my dress and creating a dangerous pool of broken glass around me. Pain shot through my back and hip, and for a terrifying moment, I felt a sharp cramp in my belly that made me fear for my daughter's safety. The entire reception fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then the laughter erupted like a dam bursting. Everyone, every single person in that opulent ballroom, was pointing at me, laughing at the pregnant woman sprawled on the floor in her cheap, wet dress. Camera phones appeared everywhere, capturing my humiliation for social media posts and cruel gossip. Even Emma, radiant in her wedding gown, was covering her mouth and giggling like this was the most hilarious thing she had ever witnessed. My own sister, the woman I had shared a bedroom with growing up, who had held my hand during thunderstorms, was laughing at my pain and terror that I lay there on the cold marble floor, my back screaming in agony, my belly exposed and vulnerable, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. No one moved to help me. No one asked if I was okay or if my baby was hurt. They were all too busy recording my misery to show any basic human compassion. Tears streamed down my face as I tried desperately to get up, but my pregnant body and the slippery floor made it nearly impossible. Every attempt to rise was met with renewed laughter from the crowd, as if my struggle was part of the entertainment. That's when everything changed. A pair of expensive Italian leather shoes appeared in my line of vision, followed by a perfectly tailored tuxedo as someone knelt beside me. When I looked up through my tears, I saw the most handsome man I had ever encountered. He had dark hair, kind gray eyes, and a face that belonged on magazine covers. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, his voice cutting through the laughter like a warm knife through butter. "Can you move? Is the baby okay?" His genuine concern, the first human kindness I had experienced in weeks, made me cry even harder, but this time from gratitude rather than humiliation. As he helped me to my feet with infinite gentleness, checking to make sure I wasn't seriously injured, I noticed how the crowd's laughter began to die down. There was something about this man's presence that commanded immediate respect. When he turned to face the crowd, his expression had transformed from gentle concern to ice-cold fury. "I'm Alexander Sterling," he announced in a voice that carried to every corner of the ballroom. The effect was instantaneous. David's face went completely white. Guests began murmuring among themselves, and I could see recognition dawning on their faces. Alexander Sterling, even I knew that name. He was one of the most powerful men in the country, known for his business empire and his ruthless pursuit of justice for those who couldn't defend themselves. But Alexander wasn't finished. He helped me to a proper chair, making sure I was comfortable and safe, before turning back to address the stunned crowd. "I've been watching this disgusting display of cruelty with great interest," he said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of danger. "What I've witnessed tonight is not just harassment, it's assault on a pregnant woman, and I have documented every second of it." He held up his phone, showing that he had been recording everything. Victoria's face drained of all color as she realized her moment of cruel triumph had been captured by one of the most powerful men in the country. But then Alexander said something that made my blood turn to ice and sent shockwaves through the entire reception. "You see, I've been investigating Emma Richardson for quite some time now. I know about her affair with Sarah's husband. I know about the inheritance fraud. And I know exactly why I'm here tonight." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's face went from glowing bride to terrified woman in seconds. David stared at his new wife with growing horror and confusion. Alexander continued, his voice never wavering. "Sarah, your father contacted me before his death. He was my business partner and one of my closest friends. He set up a substantial trust fund for you, enough to ensure you'd never have to worry about money again. But your sister has been intercepting all communications about it for 3 years, stealing every penny while you struggled to survive on minimum wage. I felt like the world was spinning around me. My father had died when I was 19, and I'd always been told there was no inheritance, no safety net. But Emma had been living off my money this entire time, using it to maintain her lifestyle and attract wealthy men like David, while I worked double shifts and worried about how I'd afford formula for my baby. Furthermore," Alexander continued, "the systematic harassment and assault that occurred here tonight is criminal. Deliberately causing a pregnant woman to fall could result in serious charges." Security guards appeared as if from nowhere and surrounded Victoria, who was now stammering excuses and looking around desperately for support that wasn't coming, but Alexander saved his most devastating revelation for last. He turned to Emma, who was now openly sobbing and trying to hide behind her wedding veil. "As for you, Emma, your fraud has been reported to federal authorities. Every dollar you've stolen will be returned with interest. Your husband's family business, which, coincidentally, I now own, will be conducting a thorough investigation. David looked at Emma with pure disgust and disbelief. Is this true? He demanded. Have you been lying to me about everything? Stealing from your own pregnant sister? When Emma couldn't answer, just stood there crying and shaking, David pulled off his wedding ring and threw it at her feet. This marriage is over, he announced to the shocked crowd. I won't be associated with a thief and an adulteress. He stormed out of the ballroom, followed by his entire family, leaving Emma standing alone in her expensive wedding dress, completely ruined and exposed. The crowd began to disperse quickly, the festive atmosphere completely destroyed. Some guests approached me with sheepish apologies, suddenly remembering their manners now that they knew who I really was, but I wasn't interested in their late-blooming compassion. Alexander turned back to me with the same gentle expression he'd shown when he first helped me up. Sarah, I've been trying to find you for months to inform you about your inheritance. Your sister has been very clever at hiding your location and intercepting mail. When I heard about the wedding, I knew it would be my opportunity to finally make things right. My father really left me money? I whispered, still in shock. Alexander smiled warmly. He left you more than money, Sarah. He left you security, freedom, and the ability to build whatever life you want for yourself and your daughter. He loved you deeply and wanted to make sure you were protected. As we talked, I noticed my mother approaching, her face pale with shock and guilt. She had finally learned the truth about Emma's deception, about the lies she had been told about my supposed instability. But I wasn't ready to forgive yet. Some wounds cut too deep for immediate healing. There's something else, Alexander said as we walked toward the exit, away from the chaos of the destroyed wedding. I run a foundation that helps women who've been abandoned or abused. Women who find themselves in impossible situations, like you did. I could use someone who truly understands what it's like to struggle, someone with real strength and character. Would you consider working with me? I looked back at the scene behind us, Emma sobbing in her ruined designer gown, Victoria being escorted away by security, guests standing around in uncomfortable silence. Then I looked at Alexander, this incredible man who had appeared in my darkest moment like an avenging angel. I think I'd love that, I said, meaning every word. 8 months later, I gave birth to the most beautiful baby girl in the world. Alexander was there at the hospital, not as a romantic interest but as the family I had chosen, the brother I had never had, the protector who had saved me when I couldn't save myself. The foundation work became my passion and my calling. We helped hundreds of women escape abusive relationships, provided job training and financial assistance, and created safe spaces for mothers and children who had nowhere else to turn. Every life we saved, every woman we empowered, felt like a victory not just for them but for the broken, pregnant woman I had once been. Emma tried to contact me countless times, begging for forgiveness and financial help. The legal consequences of her fraud had destroyed her completely. She lost everything and faced serious criminal charges. But I had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to hurt you again. Some betrayals are simply unforgivable. Looking back on that terrible night at the cathedral, I realize it was actually the most important night of my life. Yes, it was humiliating and painful, but it also revealed everyone's true character, including my own. I learned that I was stronger than I ever imagined, that I could survive the worst betrayal and emerge not just intact but triumphant. Sometimes our darkest moments are actually the doorways to our greatest blessings. Sometimes we have to be completely broken before we can be rebuilt into something even stronger and more beautiful than we were before.